name's Amy Bateman. Welcome to our farm. This is Crossfoot Farm in Cumbria. Thanks for joining me for today's webinar. So I've come inside now to film the rest of the webinar. It's shearing time here on the farm at the moment, so it's incredibly noisy outside. We might get interrupted through the window, dogs barking and sheep baaing a lot. So I'm just going to quickly give you an introduction to me. I haven't been doing photography very long at all. I picked up my first sort of proper DSLR maybe 5 or 6 years ago, popped it on auto, loved the difference I could get from phone cameras and things like that. And went off and had the children. I've got 3 kids, and my husband decided to send me on a digital photography course at the local arts centre. And I just fell in love with it. Absolutely fell in love with photography, put it on manual, was determined to learn everything, absorbed everything, magazines, YouTube tutorials, absolutely. So I just read everything I could. And quite quickly, I found that my images are okay. I'd entered some online competitions, and I've just got some here. I'll just show you as part of a PowerPoint presentation. So you can see where I'm coming from. Let's have a look. Just work out how to share the screen. Here we go. So I'll just run through these with you. Quite quickly, I'm very, very competitive, and I entered London Photo Festival. I remember getting the email to say that I'd won a good chunk of money, which was enabled me to buy another lens. And then I kept going, of course, buoyed up by success, and I won Photo Speed Photographer of the Year with this picture of the Helm Ponies. This is a local hill to us, and I'd just gone up there walking a friend's dog, not planning to do any photography, always have my camera with me. And I think that's the key to my photography. I always have my camera. I can't go to sleep at night knowing I've missed a shot. And so I won Photo Speed Photographer of the Year with this shot, and I actually got this shot completely wrong. The scene unfolded in front of me. I blew the highlights massively. Obviously, I haven't blown them enough that they were irrecoverable, but thanks to Lightroom, which I use a lot. I don't use Photoshop really, just Lightroom to enhance what's actually there in the image. I was able to pull it back, and I got this shot out of it. Thank goodness I did. And then we move on, lots of farming shots. Obviously, I live on a farm, work on a farm. My family's grown up on a farm, so surrounded by farm animals. And macro interest one year. The kids were looking after some tadpoles, so set up some funky lighting and did a study of how they developed. And not only was that category finalist, I also was shortlisted for the Royal Society of Biology Photographer of the Year with this series of photographs as well. So back to me, I wish that all of nature's magnificence, the emotion of the land, the living energy of the place could be photographed. And this is how I feel about our farm. Annie's put it a lot more succinctly than I ever could. And so I'm here a lot, and this is where I live and I work, and I see the light. And in fact, one of my followers did ask how easy it is or otherwise to find inspiration in the familiar land and the farmscapes that I live in. Well, this is a classic example. I love the light that falls through this door into the shippen here. This is where we keep our sheep and lambs in the springtime. During lambing time, I'd been mucking it out, the dog lay down. The composition wasn't right at the time. I did then reposition my coat on the door and just move the broom slightly, but that was effectively the view. And because I had my camera with me whilst we were working, I took the photograph, and that's done very well for me as that image. So the familiar, so long as you don't take it for granted, if you look and see how it changes through the seasons and throughout the day, because of course the light changes throughout the day, the familiar can actually be your friend. And I'm finding more and more I've got hidden corners on the farm that I want to visit at different seasons and different timings. So this was again just at the end of lambing time, and we're moving them back up onto the fell. I've got so many pictures of this spot, just waiting for the light to be right. And this light, this patch cloud just opened up in the background and enabled me to get that lovely leading line down to where the light has broken through. And I still take that same picture, just hoping for another, I don't know, a steam train. There's a little railway line just to the right, a rainbow or something. Just always have your camera there. in such a familiar landscape. And then when the light is right, you can capture it. My husband hates this one because all the sheep are mucky, but it was filthy. I live in Cumbria, it rains, I have to embrace the gloom. And so that one got highly commended as well. And then we come to the one that most people seem to know, which I won British Life Photographer of the Year for. And another one of my followers actually asked a question about whether I get a gut instinct, whether I know when I've taken an award-winning shot, and does it feel right at the time. Now, I don't often plan my shots, but I'd taken a phone shot of my husband stood in here, and he'd been tubing one of these poorly lambs. These are very little lambs, need our help. They haven't got a mother for lots of reasons. And the phone shot of my husband, I could just see that the light was really interesting. This is a heat lamp in the corner of this little stable. And I feel so much about this room. I wanted to capture the rustle of the lambs as they're pottering around, the smell of the milk powder and the straw, the warmth of the heat lamp. And it's a very emotional spot for me. This is when I'm at my busiest, the most intense. And this was at 10 o'clock at night. And so I took my camera on a tripod, and I've got a little remote control in my left hand. And I just took lots of photographs. I did put my crook there, so it's a little bit more breaking up the middle of the photograph. And then these three lambs just moved to the side and stood there. And I do remember looking in the back of the camera and just thinking, oh, brilliant, brilliant. That's the image I wanted. But I never know if they're going to be really popular. I take photos because I like to take the photos. I like to capture our environment, the places that we live, and I love creating images. But the subjectivity of photography means that even if I really like one, I had one recently, I really, really liked, I put it out on social media and it was just okay response. And I thought, okay, but this one went down a storm. And so I entered it into British Life Photographer of the Year, and thankfully I won, and haven't looked back. So that was a little introduction to me and how I've got to where I am today. I would like to now introduce you to our farm in a little bit more detail and take you through the seasons on our farm with some of my images. So I'll just share the screen again for us here. Let's just go to this one. Okay, so we've got here Croftfoot Farm. So this is where I live and this is where we work and play. We're on the edge of the National Park here in Cumbria, so the Lake District National Park. And we have beef cows and we have sheep. We've got 900 acres, so it keeps us very busy. My husband, much more than me. My photography is taking off now, and I am working as a commercial photographer now. So he has to do an awful lot more work on his own. So here we go. This is through the farm, through the seasons. I have bought 4 Herdwicks purely for photography. It was a great excuse to actually get Herdwicks onto our farm. These are on a neighbour's farm. They weren't ours. These are Suffolk's, these sheep. This is on a little lake or a tarn close by. One of my favourite pictures. It's actually behind me. When I come back out of this shared screen, you can see the picture behind me. This is going back to the question about how familiar landscapes. I'd actually clocked this composition a long time back and was just waiting for the right time, the right moment. And I was driving along the road, this is roadside, through our farm, and this rough fell sheep literally just tottered up and stood there perfectly between the 2 trees when it had snowed. So again, having my camera with me all the time, and the familiar landscapes that just lend themselves to different images at different times of the year. This is moving rough sheep with one of our previous farm workers, Hector, bringing them out of one field, moving them into another. And then we get into spring, we've got the lambs. Probably my favourite time of the year. I'm most involved at lambing time. I look after the pet lambs. And we had 90 odd this year. So our farm goes up onto a fell called Lamrig Fell, and from there we can look over towards the Kentdale Kentmere Horseshoe, if anybody's familiar with it over there. We've got Mardale and Ilbell over, so it's the first of the Lakeland peaks as you head over towards Windermere, and they're all visible from the top of our farm. And of course, at springtime, lambing time, we get that lovely, gorgeous golden light that starts creeping over the landscape. It makes a change from the colder tones from winter. And there's always something to photograph on a farm. And we mustn't forget the cows. I know I'm more known for my sheep, but we mustn't forget the cows. This one had just been born, just about make out mum's legs in the background. So it wasn't shy of the camera just yet. I was behind a very big, heavy gate. Snuck the camera through a little hole because the cows' mums are actually, their calves' mums are quite emotional, I should say, when they've just given birth, and it's quite a dangerous position to be taken, snapping away. So I always keep myself safe. Now, one of the things I really like about photography is being able to build a story into the image, and my pictures particularly, I really like to create storytelling images. And so Robert Frank's quote really hits a chord with me. And this year, obviously, we've all experienced lockdown. And this has been my favourite image overall with lockdown. My children obviously couldn't go to school. They stayed at home. They've helped tremendously on the farm. And this was my youngest daughter with her favourite pet lamb, which is called Dink. And this is in a cow byre. I've got a little shot of how, a little movie clip to play you of how I actually took the shot and how I set it up. So I'll just play that for you now. Okay, so here we have the byre, and this is where I've taken that picture of Rosie's lamb. So during lockdown, children didn't have any school friends popping round, and they helped with lambing a lot. And so Rosie got very attached to a lamb, and this is the byre that I chose to photograph Rosie in with the lamb. Now, ordinarily, this is exactly how it looks, but it's very, very, very dark. I'm using a Rotolight Neo just to light it at the moment, so you can see, and a swallow joins us. But if I turn the Rotolight off, I've got my aperture wide open on this lens to 2.8, and we're on a shutter speed of 1 to 50 for recording, and you'll see how dark it goes. I'll just show you here. Okay, so that's how dark it goes. Now, I'm really familiar with this place. I love the back of the cow barn here. So in order to take that picture of Rosie in this very low light situation, I used a tripod. Rosie sat still. Rather well, but I also built it in HDR. So I took 5 photos of different exposures to catch the light coming in the window, and I used Lightroom and put those 5 different exposures, built them up together, and got the image that you can see here. Now, the other thing is about this byre is that on a sunny day, it's not sunny at the moment. I'll try and come back for this recording when it's sunny. But the light comes through that window on an early morning. So I'm really familiar with all of our barns and what time of day the light's best in them and where it falls and where the shadows are. So again, I picked my moment, there's another swallow, picked my moment to take that picture, depending on where the light was just right as it was coming straight through the window and hitting that side wall. Now, there's also a lot of foliage out there that's grown up since that picture was taken, because that was back in spring. Hello, swallow. And now we've got a lot of, they're actually blackcurrant bushes, which are delicious, just outside the window. So the light's never going to be that good in here until winter or spring again. So there we go, that's how I got that shot. So then it's back to the seasons, and we are now in summer. So I've got some shots here now of summer, which I shall show you. I'm just going to work out sharing my screen again, and we'll take you through the journey of the seasons in the summer. So we've got these cows being brought down off our fell. Like I said, there's always something going on the farm, some little leading lines, some stone wall to take your eye. And there's lots of compositions to be found, lots of places. Friend getting the hay in. I often called onto neighbours' farms to help do various things. This was us getting our silage in. Pretty recently, that was just last week. It's one of my favourite shots. So there's silage to be made, and we cart it into the pit for the cows to eat in a big room where it's all stacked up. And then we also make bales as well. And here we are carting the last of the bales in the summer evening light. And of course the tones and the colours and everything in summer, in Cumbria particularly, where it rains a lot, and when we do get some warmth and sunshine, the vegetation does seem to grow rather well for our green and pleasant land. So more silage being made here. Gateways are lovely, lovely areas for a composition of a photo to be captured. I use them quite a lot. And then of course the shearing, which we're doing at the moment. Black and white lends itself very nicely to a lot of situations on the farm, just because you haven't always got the weather, the best light. It can be a bit gritty, it can be dirty. There's also some random piece of equipment or machinery that's brightly coloured that you want to stop being so glaringly obvious. So I do use black and white quite a bit on the farm. Just helps take your eye into the photograph a bit better. Beautiful summer's evenings leading into autumn now. You see across the fells there to the Lake District Hills. And of course, working with the sheep on the land and having my camera with me all the time, when the weather is right, I can just get those lovely photographs. So I thought I'd just give you a really quick guide to the sheep breeds, the native breeds of Cumbria. Sorry if I'm teaching you how to suck eggs, if there are any farmers watching this or any of my friends who know them, but here we go. So these are Swaledales, and these are on a friend's farm just outside Greyrig. And then of course, everybody knows the Herdwicks, or they should know, don't admit to me if you don't. But anyway, those are the Herdwicks. This is one of my favouriteest shots. I've got it up in the kitchen downstairs on acrylic. It goes beautifully on acrylic. And then this one, which I've entitled British Wool, which is some of our rough fells again in the gateway. And that gateway really helps the composition for that image. So what I thought I'd just do now was show you how the animal eye autofocus works. I've got a few little clips to show you. I've been trying it on the sheep and the dogs. It works on all of our farm animals. So I'll just pull those up now and I'll see if I can get them showing you for you. I'm just going to quickly show you, this camera has already recognised Florence's face there with the white square around it, and I've got our human eye autofocus turned on. So if we have a look here, I half depress the shutter, I use back button focus. So Florence's eye that's closest to us has actually become the point of focus. If you just look towards the door, Florence, for me. That's lovely. And then up towards the back to the camera, and then up towards the calendar. And you see it flicks to the other eye. So it automatically selects back to us, the eye which is closest to us. You can smile. It's allowed. Thank you very much, Florence. So I've got Meg here in the barn this morning. Just going to quickly show you how the animal eye autofocus works on the Sony cameras. This helps me take those perfectly sharp animals eye focus shots with the nice soft background. Lie down, Meg. Meg, lie down. I know you can hear lots going on out there. So we'll quickly change it from subject detection human, pop it onto animal, and then when Meg looks at us, we've got a lovely eye, haven't we, Meg? Shall we take a picture? Thank you. Good girl. So I brought my Herdwicks into the pens now, so you can see how the animal eye autofocus works here on the Herdies as well. So already the camera's picking up the eye on my Herdwick straight away. So with the shallow depth of field, which I love using for a lot of my photos of animals, we are guaranteed to focus on the eye. There we go. Okay, so that gives you a really good idea of the eye autofocus function on my Sony cameras. And I'll just quickly show you what I keep in my kit bag. My favourite camera, the A7R3. It's a 42 megapixel sensor. This is my favourite lens. It's the G Master f2.8. This is the 24-17. It's really versatile. I probably have this on most of the time when I'm pottering out and about. Nice and wide at 24. Gives me a good amount of zoom in at the 70mm end. And of course, with a sensor that size, I can crop in quite nicely. So if I need a bit of extra reach, I'm not worrying too much. So that's my favourite setup. I use that a lot. My backup camera, which actually isn't a backup anymore, it gets used just as much because it's just a superb camera too. This is the A7 III, slightly smaller sensor size, so that's ideal for my property photography. When I'm building up HDR images, when I'm doing the properties that I'm photographing, using 5 images out of this camera to combine them to make an HDR image uses up so much less space on my computer and runs a lot faster to be able to create those images because of the smaller sensor size. So that's really useful. It's great for doing vlogging, videos, movies, that sort of thing as well. I've got a 35mm on here, 2.8. Really quite nice for portraits. I've got some other prime lenses that I regularly use. I love the Zeiss lens 1.8. That's the 85mm. Probably my second favorite lens is the 1.8 55mm. Again, this is a Sony Zeiss lens. That is really nice and lightweight, and combined with the mirrorless camera to chuck on and being able to photograph anything anywhere. That's a superb lens to have in your kit bag. I've got the f4 16-35, which is the Sony Zeiss. I don't need any less than a f4 with this because I tend to use it for landscapes or outdoor portraits, or mostly the property photography. And when I'm doing properties, I can use a slightly longer exposure because I use a tripod a lot. So the f4 works brilliantly for me. And then I've got this big boy, which is probably my third favorite. Yeah, the 70-200, it's the G Master lens. So this is f2.8. Again, really lovely and sharp throughout its range. A very, very, very capable lens. I love it. It's got the collar, obviously, because it's quite heavy. There's no problem with Sony cameras about the mount. So I do wear it around my neck a lot. And the collar actually makes a very useful little spot to hang your camera when you're on it and you're not using a tripod. So that's in my kit bag. Coming back to the farm, I do photograph a lot of sheep. They don't tend to run away so much, they're a little bit safer, but we do obviously have cows as well. So I'll just take you through some of the pictures here we've got of the cows. And again, this was very simply lit. They were inside and the sunlight was hitting a puddle that went underneath the main doors, and so the sunlight actually reflected up off the ground and gave this feeling of rim lighting to this animal. So again, I love sourcing the light in different places around the farm. And you can see the grills of the door there reflected in his eye. Her, I should say. Sorry, girl. Always gorgeous big skies. I don't mind photographing landscapes. I do enjoy them, but I like storytelling images as well. And of course, this is dinner time. These were some calves and the morning light. We just bedded down, so there was quite a bit of dust about from the straw and the moisture of their air as they're breathing out. They've been running around like lunatics whilst we were going in and out of the straw. And that adds to the image there with the light catching their breath. So again, another quote which puts things a lot more succinctly than I can. And this is what I love about photography, is the images I'm creating here on the farm are just documenting a moment in time. So even though the land changes and the people change, the image will never change, and it just captures that moment in time. So let's not forget about the dogs. I do the dogs as well. And they're always full of characters. They are working dogs, so they're not pets. We don't let them in the house. They live outside. They are part of our team here, a very important part of our team, but a very photogenic part of our team as well, especially when they have pups. I mean, who doesn't love a lovely puppy shot? Ridiculously photogenic with the pups. You can get really carried away. And then there's that door again. Meg was photographed in front of that door earlier, and now this is the door shut. And she was actually in there looking after her pups, and she heard me coming up the yard, and you knew I was coming because her little nose would poke under the door. She actually chewed a great big hole, and that's a bigger hole now. She'll probably get a head out of it. And there's Meg with her beautiful collie smile. So, since winning Photographer of the Year, British Life Photographer of the Year, it's really helped boost my commercial work. I was starting to work commercially anyway. And now I'm getting some really lovely commissions, travelling across the country, photographing farms, getting animal images, farming images, for various different organisations. I am very active on social media. That's how my photography started. And so by sharing images on social media, it does get you out there and drip feeds you into people's consciousness. And that's how I found I've generated quite a lot of work, is that people know my images and say, hey, will you come and do this? So it's certainly worth being active on social media. I've never paid for any marketing, and I've got more than enough work at the moment, so I'm in a very, very fortunate position. And I like to photograph things that I like and things that I'm good at, so keeping to my skill sets. And friends often ask me to photograph them. Obviously they pay, so I get to see some brilliant families, some lovely families, and photograph them in some gorgeous places. Obviously the animals in some gorgeous places too. I'm starting up doing some pet photography, just put on hold a little bit by coronavirus. So just trying to establish some sort of studio ideas and work out how the backdrops work, or as they don't. And this is a classic one of how they don't, where I didn't iron the backdrop and it clearly shows because my aperture was obviously too short. But then there we go. It's a learning process, and I've still got an awful lot to learn, but I'm loving the journey. So again, more organisations doing various commissions, products in the Lake District, lovely place to live and work, some fabulous products, fabulous businesses, and it's an absolute joy to work alongside the owners and photograph their stunning products and things. And then my kids get involved quite a lot. So it's a welly company, and these get often printed in magazines and newspapers. Animal physiotherapist at work. That was quite challenging, actually. Beautiful racehorses, but that was quite a challenging shoot just to try and get the light. The light was terrible that day. So I do take flashlights. I've got various systems. I've got some a Rotolight that I use, and I've got 2 Godox speed lights, and so they come on journeys with me too. We're starting off doing farm photography tours very soon. I am doing one-to-ones already. Assurance is in place, and Corona's not stopping those. But we're going to do them more for groups, and camera clubs have been coming, so we can set these sort of images up so that you can photograph them yourself. Hence, it's why I bought the Herdwicks. Yeah, so many people say things better than I do. That just sums it up. That's what I like to do. And here is one of those shots. One of my followers asked me a really lovely question, if there was a shot that you want to be remembered for. And I think this is one of my shot of a lifetime. I'd been with the shepherds here in the valley of Wasdale in Cumbria, and they'd invited me to go and photograph the gather of nearly 1,000 Herdwick sheep from Greendale allotment, which is up on the left here on this photograph. We brought them down the fell and then walked them up the valley, up the road here. And I was on a knobble waiting. I didn't know that this was going to pan out quite like this. And I'm glad I had the right lens on. And it's just one of those shots that I absolutely adore. It sells very well. And I'm going over to Wasdale, and we're going to put a 4-metre wide version of this up in the cafe in the sawmill in Wasdale. So if you're ever over that way, you can go and see it. And there'll be copies on for sale in there as well. There are a couple of stockists of my work in Kendal and the surrounding area. There's a lovely cafe in Kendal called Relish, and they've got some of my prints on display to sell. There's Wools of Cumbria Carpets, which is also in Kendal, and they've got a brilliant situation set up called the Wool Shed, which helps support the woolen trade in Cumbria. So there are artists associated with the woolen trade. So there are people who make tweed products, interior designers, and they've got some of my images up on display as well. And just recently, I've just put up an exhibition at the Lakeland Farm Visitors Centre, which is in Ings, just outside Staveley. So if anybody's heading to the Lake District this summer and they fancy going to look at some of my pictures, they're on display there. They are available for purchasing as well, and I've got some cards. And it's a great spot for lunches, teas, coffees, lovely gift shop, and it's certainly definitely worth a pop in if you're up that way. And finally, I'd like to say thank you very much to Wilkinson's Cameras for putting my webinar on this morning, and a huge thank you to Sony for supporting me. I use Sony cameras out of my own choice, but the support has been terrific with the transition to using their cameras. And I'm looking forward to making loads more images for you all to see in the future. I'd like to leave you now with a little clip of the gather, of the pictures that I took of the gather up in Wasdale, and they're all fed together to make a little movie for you. So I hope you enjoy it, and thanks again ever so much. Cheers.